Hey everyone, how's it going? It's time. I was gonna wait till I got to 200,000 subs, but hey, everyone has been so awesome on the channel lately, so we're gonna release this one a little bit early. The run needs no introduction. We're gonna try and beat Gold and Silver, my first ever solo run I'm showing off in Gold and Silver, and what better Pokemon to try with than Magikarp? Now Magikarp needs no introduction. It's bad. Statistically one of the worst Pokemon in the entire game, and can only learn, well, 2 or 3 or 4 moves depending how you look at it. It starts off with Splash, which is awful. And it does nothing. Literally nothing. Doesn't raise stats, it's useless. And that segues nicely into this part of the run, because this is always one of the worst and most tedious parts of any Magikarp run I would know. I've done a lot of them. And it's the fact you can't attack. In some games, this is pretty bad. In Gold and Silver, it's okay. Because thankfully, before you have to defeat any trainer, and you can lose to the first rival. Speaking of which, you might be wondering, how the heck did you get a Magikarp? Well, there's 2 ways. The easiest, and the way most of you would be able to do this challenge, is by trading in an egg. And that's how I was able to ensure I got a shiny Magikarp, because in Gold and Silver, shininess is determined by the DVs, which we're not going to really talk about too much, but essentially if you're breeding with a shiny Pokemon, and there is a red Gyarados available, you have a 1 in 64 chance of getting a shiny Magikarp, or a 1 in 32 if it's the opposite gender, and since my Gyarados was male, we have a female shiny Magikarp. Not bad. And I just trade in the egg as soon as I get the Pokedex, meaning I fought the rival with Totodile and just intentionally lost. However, I do have a new method that would allow me to swap my starter right at the beginning, but either method works just fine, and in my opinion is just as legit. In fact, this one is far easier for the average person to pull off. So once we've gotten the Magikarp and traded it over, we then have what is usually the most tedious part of the run, trying to get it to level 15 so that we can actually make progress. Because, like I said, we don't have an attacking move. However, we can get one. Any Pokemon, if they run out of power points, in our case all 40 of our Splash power points, can use Struggle. Now if you've seen my Fire Red and Leaf Green Magikarp video, Struggle works the exact same way. But if you've only seen the Red and Blue, Struggle works a little bit different. It isn't a normal attack, it's now typeless, and it deals far less recoil damage, only 25% of the damage dealt instead of 50%. So that's pretty nice. And just like in both those other runs, we're going to use Metapod/Kakuna to level up safely. Because in order to use Struggle, we don't want to use the Pokemon Center because they'll restore our power points. So we're going to have to rely on potions, and there's not a lot of money in the early game, especially because we lost to the rival. And so even though we can theoretically battle any Pokemon we want, in order to conserve HP, Kakuna/Metapod are the best option. There's one unfortunate thing about that. While there are Metapod and Kakuna on routes 30 and 31, they only appear at a 15% rate, which is pretty bad. Contrast with Red and Blue, they were 40% in Viridian Forest, and 20% in Fire Red and Leaf Green. So you'd think I'd be more annoyed, but there's one massive difference between the Generation 1 games and Generation 2. Something we only got to use at the very end of the Generation 1 run. And this is another massive difference between my Magikarp runs and all the other runs you may have seen on my channel. We're going to use items in battle. While some of you might be disappointed by that, the fact of the matter is, without using items, this run becomes almost impossible, and becomes simply a matter of leveling up until you have no issues, which takes a very long time and is kind of boring. With items, it introduces a level of strategy, especially when it comes to the battle items, sometimes known as the X items, because X attack, X defend, and those 2 are available right away in Violet City. And because of that, we can actually take on Falkner far earlier than you might otherwise think. Speaking of which, another really beneficial change to this run is in the first 4 generations, 3 of the initial gym leaders are Rock-type gym leaders. Only in Generation 2 is it not a Rock-type, and in fact Falkner's Pokemon are pretty weak. He's one of the weakest first gym leaders I think in all of Pokemon. So let's flash forward to level 12. Yes, I don't even have Tackle yet. And let's take on Faulkner. Now I'm going to start off by using 1 X attack, and why not just use 6? Well, here's an issue with early game item runs. You don't have a lot of in-game money. So I didn't actually have enough money for multiple X attacks. I used them all on potions, which I used to heal. But it's okay, it still works, especially if we get a tackle miss, which we just did. And we have a berry equipped. If the tackle misses, the berry will activate against Pidgeotto and not Pidgey. Pidgey will just use tackle again and again and again. It does have Mud Slap, but for whatever reason the AI opts to use tackle against Magikarp. And eventually, we will win this intense battle of wits and knock out the Pidgey. When Pidgeotto comes out, it will just spam Gust, which does do decent damage. Thankfully, we are within range for a potion, so we will use that potion, which is our last potion as you can see. Thankfully, the way the math works, so long as Pidgeotto doesn't get a critical hit, I mean I did but didn't really matter, we can defeat it, and we can get that precious in-game money. And oh yeah, the Zephyr badge, the first badge in the game. Usually this is a very tedious sticking point in most Magikarp runs, but for us that's actually coming up. Because the longest grinding section of the entire game is not Faulkner, but traditionally someone who's regarded as the easiest gym leader, maybe in Pokemon history, Bugsy. That's right. The person who uses a Metapod and a Kakuna, unironically, is one of the toughest sections. And let's talk about exactly why. I mean, the Hiker in Union Cave is also kind of annoying, but we can just level up and we can use Struggle if we want to. So, there's so many gyms, we don't really have time to focus on every little inconvenience. Let's talk about a major inconvenience. There still aren't a ton of trainers, and the trainers who we can battle do not give us a ton of money. So money is very scarce. Additionally, Bugsy's Scyther uses Fury Cutter, a move that normally isn't too big a deal, but when you're using a Magikarp and taking multiple turns, Fury Cutter starts dealing insane amounts of damage. So even though we have Super Potions and can heal our entire HP in a single turn, that's actually bad, because it's just giving Bugsy one more attempt at Fury Cutter, plus you can be poisoned by the Kakuna. It actually does know Poison Sting, and that just doesn't work. Well, why not go to Ilex Forest? That wouldn't help too much anyway, the Pokemon there are pretty weak, but we have the rival blocking our way, and the rival is just as annoying as Bugsy. In fact, even with a max 6x attack, that's right, even if you scrounge up the money for 6x attacks, and you struggle against Bayleaf, it only does around half. And unfortunately, in Generation 2, like Generation 1, crits ignore stat increases, and frankly, even if they didn't, it wouldn't really matter, we wouldn't be dealing enough damage. So, we're stuck, and we're at a pretty high level, which is definitely annoying because the Pokemon we have to train off of are pretty low level. And yeah, we can use Pokemon Centers now, so we don't have to worry about potions outside of battle, but this takes an insanely long time. But there is a saving grace on the horizon. And unfortunately, to get that, we need to get all the way to level 30. And funny enough, what I realized is as I got higher and higher in level, I got more money, and Bugsy, who I thought would actually be the sticking point, ended up being just useful for experience. And battling Bugsy ends up being not too bad. The strategy is to use 2x defense on the Metapod, since the worst it can do is lower your speed and use Harden. And then we're going to set up 6x attacks, because, well, it's a Metapod. So it's really not that bad. Hopefully we knock out the Kakuna before it uses Poison Sting in a couple of hits, and then we just need Tackle not to miss too much, and we should win the damage battle with Scyther. Unfortunately, in this battle, I get a pretty inopportune Tackle miss, so Scyther wins. But in the next battle, you'll see the strategy work, well, the way it's supposed to. And if we just fast forward the Metapod part, Kakuna does take 3 hits, and so we actually have the chance to get poisoned. Thankfully, that doesn't happen, and we move on to Scyther. In this battle, I actually don't get a Tackle miss, but Scyther gets a Fury Cutter miss, which if that happens, pretty much guarantees us a victory. And by level 21, we have the Bug Badge. However, it doesn't really feel like an accomplishment, since at this point, it's rival number 2, which is really proving to be the obstacle. Once we get Flail though, rival number 2 also doesn't become too bad. However, I think we should also talk about the fact that he leads off with the Ghastly. And unfortunately, since Tackle is a normal move, I will have to use up all my power points of both Tackle and Splash, so I'll be able to damage this Ghastly, and it can be incredibly trolly. And just before the battle begins, in case you were wondering, 11 hours, 45 minutes. With the Pokemon we have available to train, that's how long it takes to get to the point where we actually are in a position to beat rival number 2. This was the run that made me never want to play at single speed anymore. Now, despite the fact I said the Ghastly can be trolly, it is the Pokemon we have to set up against. So I have a Paralysis Cure Berry equipped, and I'm going to set up all 6 X attacks. Thankfully, we don't get paralyzed and the Hypnosis misses. Spite is useless, but a single struggle knocks out Ghastly, and as you can see, I made it so that after I knock out the Ghastly, I hit level 30, and thus have access to Flail, which will be useful against the next 2 Pokemon. Now, Ghastly was supposed to do a bit more damage to me and it didn't, so Flail is base 20 power, which is awful, and now no crit, good, and we knock out the Bayleaf. That is excellent. Thankfully, Razor Leaf just put us within range of the base 80 power Flail, and Zubat will be absolutely no issue. Finally, it's taken us almost 12 in-game hours. We're finally gonna make it out of Azalea Town. And I'm gonna be perfectly honest, the run speeds up substantially from here. And that may surprise you because traditionally Whitney is thought of as one of the most difficult gym leaders, but because we're so over-leveled, she's not gonna be too big a deal. But starting with Whitney, we need to decide what amount of HP we want to enter the fight with. This was actually my first battle, so I enter with full health always just to see how it's gonna go. And Whitney's very trolly because Clefairy likes to spam Metronome and can use anything from Thunderbolt, wow, that did a lot of damage, to Glare, yeah, that was pretty bad, and you also saw an Ice Beam mixed in there. That makes it really annoying to set up against because one of the most important things in this run is consistency. Knowing what moves we're going to see, when to set up, how much to set up. In addition to 6 X attacks, you saw I also used 1 X defend. In the end, I didn't really need it though, because Clefairy leaves me at 9 HP, which is enough for a 100 base power Flail, easily enough to knock out Clefairy, and as bulky as Miltank is, it can't withstand a max power 150 base power Flail, and at level 33, we've only gained 3 levels in between, we have defeated Whitney. Feels so strange I had a much harder time with Bugsy, but hey, that's a Magikarp run for you. And speaking of difficult gym leaders, we have another one coming up in Morty. Morty can either be really hard or really easy, and of course since we're a normal move using Pokemon, Flail our best move is a normal move, we have to stick to typeless struggle, worry about recoil damage, because he's the ghost type gym leader. And just like with his predecessor Agatha, the ghost Pokemon aren't just tricky to damage, they also use lots of trolly moves like Hypnosis, and one of the moves we really don't want to see, Curse. Curse subtracts half of the user's HP, but will deal 1/4 of damage to my Magikarp every turn. With potions, we can be okay, but that makes it a much more tricky battle than it otherwise would be. And unlike Whitney, Morty took me many attempts to figure out a strategy, and here's what I ended up doing. So with Ghastly, I'm going to set up an X attack. If Ghastly uses Curse here, I just reset. I have a Paralysis Cure Berry equipped, so if Lick does paralyze me, it's not the end of the world, doesn't happen, and a single struggle knocks out Ghastly. That also will allow Haunter to be a 2-hit KO. We really don't want Hypnosis, which we get, but I've bought an Awakenings, so I can use it. I then get hit with a Nightshade, and I'm going to go for the second struggle, and that is Haunter down. Now, Gengar is a 3-hit KO, and it really just depends on what it does. Shadow Ball, despite the fact it's a physical attack in this generation, still deals pretty decent damage. So, what I ended up doing is using Struggle, was hoping for the crit, didn't get it, Hypnosis miss. Now Shadow Ball would knock me out, so I need to use an X defend. Another Hypnosis miss, that's very good. I'm gonna heal with a Super Potion, and unfortunately, third time's the charm. I am put to sleep, but I have an awakening, so I'm gonna use it. It goes for Dream Eater because I'm supposed to be asleep, and it misses. Now I'm gonna use 2 X attacks, which will hopefully knock out Gengar and the next Haunter in a single hit. I get a Mean Look, which is good, and a Hypnosis, that's good. Now I just need to knock it. Oh. Well, apparently my damage calculations were off, and thank goodness that Hypnosis missed. That would have been annoying, but we knock out the Gengar, and now hopefully my calculations were right for the Haunter. Nope, wrong again. I needed 3 X attacks. Thankfully it uses Nightshade. I still have plenty of HP remaining, and this took quite a while. As with a lot of these battles, if I want to waste tons of time and get all the way up to level 100, I could beat pretty much every gym leader really easily. But even with Magikarp, I do try to do these as efficiently as possible. So we're at level 39, well now level 40, and we have beaten 4 gym leaders, which is pretty good. And here's where the game opens up quite a bit. There are plenty different places we can go to, and plenty of different trainers we can battle if we need experience points. But I decide to go pretty much in order. I head through Olivine, battle some trainers there, and then go to Cyanwood City to battle the 5th gym leader, Chuck. Once again, this is my first battle, so I'm going in with full HP. And so far, we haven't used any HP manipulation strats for Flail. And honestly, this battle is really silly. So I go for 1 X defend because they do have pretty good attack. And for whatever reason, Chuck just starts spamming Leer and never attacks me again. So after I'm done setting up all my X attacks, I'm pretty sure I set up 6. My HP is such that Tackle was doing more damage than Flail. So I go for Tackle, and it's not 1-hit KO, but I do knock it out without taking more damage. And then against Poliwrath, it keeps trying to go for Dynamic Punch, but it never uses Mind Reader, which it has. And so we are still at 63 HP, and we've won. Definitely I can envision a much more efficient strategy going forward, but hey, when you're playing with the Magikarp and you get a first try victory, we take those. And so that's 5 gym badges. Sorry, I had to throw one of those in there. But this is actually looking really good. And now is where I'm a little nervous because Jasmine, the 6th gym leader, well, she has Steel Pokemon, and Steelix could be very frustrating. Price looks to be the better play, and now, as we save in front of Price, 18 hours, 26 minutes. Now, I have battled Price before, but this is my first time at my current level, so I don't really know what the strategy is going to be, and so I'll just go in at full health and figure it out. And the most interesting thing, just because I can't figure out why I did this, is I rearranged my items menu. I mean, yeah, things are in better locations now, but had I lost, I would have just reset, undoing all this. So why did I even bother? Doesn't matter, I use 6 X attacks, and the Seal's not doing very much. It goes for Icy Wind a bunch. Icy Wind always lowers speed in later generations. In Gen 2, it doesn't always lower speed, kinda weird. But because my HP is still too high, I'm just gonna use Tackle and I easily knock out Seal. Dugong actually takes 2 tackles, but didn't really bother me much, and same thing ends up being true of Piloswine. But I'm at 56 health. I wasn't even really in any danger of fainting. And that's gym badge number 6. So the last 2 gyms have been pretty easy. Generation 2 is definitely looking a little bit easier for Magikarp so far. However, we haven't had to face a rock, or in this case steel gym yet. Plus, the Magnemite have electric moves. So if there was any gym leader who was going to be insanely tough for Magikarp to beat and require me to take a ton of time to level it up, it would be Jasmine. So I do what any logical person would do, battle her immediately. So I'm still at level 48, and it took many attempts, but I figured out a strategy. Against Magnemite, it likes to go for Thunder Wave and then Supersonic. And though it can do so beforehand, it probably won't go for Thunderbolt before it's done using those 2 moves. So I can set up at least 3 X attack and then it goes for Thunderbolt. Luckily, there is a full restore you can pick up along your way, because you can't actually buy them yet. And so now I'm at full HP, and then I get hit with another Thunderbolt, putting me at 14 HP, and if we look at the flail calculator, that's a 100 base power flail plus 3x attacks, and that's enough to knock out Magnemite number 1 and Magnemite number 2. And here is where damage calculations really help me. If I use an X defend, Steelix, unless it gets a crit, should not be able to knock out Magikarp. Of course, it helps tremendously that it keeps missing with Iron Tail, but when it finally does hit, it only does 12 damage, which is double good because now I have a 200 base power flail, and down goes Steelix, and we have defeated the first 7 Johto Gym Leaders at only level 48, which again, considering we're a Magikarp, is outstanding. And now, for those of you who remember Gold and Silver, there is a whole bunch of other stuff we need to do involving the Radio Tower and Team Rocket, and then Ice Cave. So I do have to level up quite a bit before I can battle Claire, but Claire is also going to be kind of tough. While I'm very grateful that her first Dragonair does not know Thunderbolt, it does know Dragon Breath, a special dragon move, and Thunder Wave, so it can paralyze me. So I'm definitely going to need to set up against it, because I certainly don't want to be around for that second Dragonair and its Thunderbolt. However, there is one battle I should talk about before then, Rival number 3. There aren't nearly as many rival battles as there are in Red and Blue, but he has a ghost Pokemon, and I actually was doing pretty poorly against him even before I got to the Haunter. And basically what it came down to is I need to set up 6x attacks. Golbat will keep spamming Wing Attack, and I can't get a critical hit. If Golbat never gets a critical hit, I win. And it's only a 6%, so a 6% and 6 times that it attacks, well, those aren't amazing odds for me, but they're doable, so eventually I got to 32 HP. I then am going to use a full heal to get rid of the confusion. So now I have a max power, based 100 flail. I have 3 flails left because the rival will always send out his Pokemon in the same order for Magikarp. And so I luckily get to knock out Golbat, Magnemite, and Meganium. This is a weird thing that Generation 2 does, where it sends out Pokemon based on types for certain good trainers. But in this case, it was very beneficial, because now I can heal. Curse actually doesn't matter, because we will knock out Haunter and Sneasel, both of whom have horrible defense, with a single struggle, and that's Rival number 3. Took me many attempts, and the reason I don't show those off in this run is because the attempts in the Magikarp run is more about figuring out exactly when to use the X attacks, exactly how many to use, and so there's not really a ton to say about them. It's me trying to figure out the optimal strategy, and if there's a luck component, I'll mention it like I did here. But yeah, now that we've defeated the rival, nothing else is really too scary at this point of the game, so let's jump ahead to Claire. So I might as well show you the first battle. We are 21 hours, 7 minutes in. Let's see what we're in for. Alright, so always my first attempt, I try and set up as many X attacks as possible, and I'm paralyzed right off the bat. And then Dragonair just starts spamming Dragon Breath. So after I think about 4 X attacks, my HP is low enough that I use a Hyper Potion, then I use the rest of the X attacks, and here is where something very interesting happens. After I'm done using the X attacks and healing my paralysis using a paralysis heal, and if you're wondering why not use a full restore, you can't actually buy those until you get to the Elite Four. But I decide to play it risky, and it pays off because I end up at 7 HP. That's a 150 base power flail. That knocks out 1, 2, 3 Dragonair, and yes, even the Kingdra. And so while it wasn't planned necessarily, the HP worked out perfectly, and we're just about ready to move on to the Elite Four. Yeah, I know there's a bunch of game in between that, but none of those trainers are that difficult. There is one final rival battle, yes, but the strategy is pretty much the exact same thing you already saw, but it's actually way easier this time because the rival leads off with Sneasel, And yeah, it is Fury Cutter, but Sneasel isn't nearly as scary as Golbat was with its confusing moves and whatnot, so we can easily set up all the X attacks. As it turns out, I actually miscalculated, or I didn't really know the order to be perfectly fair, and I had one extra flail, so I just heal against the Haunter, use a struggle, max powered of course, knock out the Kadabra, and now without further ado, at level 61, we're going to take on the Elite Four. Now you may know that in many of my challenges, I have a no saving in between battles rule. Usually for the quote-unquote impossible challenges, I suspend that rule. But I decided to try using it for this run. And it definitely was a little difficult. Each member of the Elite Four individually posed some interesting challenges for Magikarp. And it goes to show you that having items does not make these challenges free. You need to know what items to use, when to use them, and yeah, get a little lucky. And Will is a good example of that, because the Pokemon we need to set up against is a Xatu. And Xatu will just spam Psychic. I have low special defense, and it does a ton of damage. Until Generation 5, I think it was, or 4, there is no X special defense. So X specials just raise my special attack, which is useless. So unfortunately, there's nothing I can do to lower the Psychic damage, plus there was a 10% chance that Psychic lowers my special defense. With that said, let's show off the Will battle. So he starts off with Confuse Ray, and I'm going to try and set up all 6 X attacks. Once my HP gets low enough, I'll use a full restore, since that will give me another turn for him to use Confuse Ray, and that doesn't deal any damage, no critical hit chance there. And unfortunately, while I'm at very good HP, once I've set up all 6, I'm confused, and so I need to use a full restore because Psychic would knock me out. I then have to stall by using Tackle. I've deleted Splash with the move deleter in Blackthorn, but I tank a couple Psychics, which will give me a 100 base power flail, and thankfully that is just enough to knock out every single one of Will's Pokemon. However, the one thing I should mention here is that this is very luck dependent. If I get any special defense drop or a critical hit, and there's a decent chance with the number of turns I need that both or either will happen, this strategy doesn't work. Of course, I am only at level 61, so at a higher level this could be easier, but at this level that's kind of what I figured out to do. Then we move on to Koga, who actually is kind of problematic for a few reasons, and we're going to show off one of the big ones here. So I'm going to set up quickly all the X attacks while Ariados goes for Giga Drain. Thankfully it didn't use Baton Pass, which can be very annoying. However, the biggest problem is not the Ariados nor the Venomoth, but in fact the Forretress. Because Forretress can use Explosion, and it has massive defense, and it resists Flail, and I heal obviously at the beginning, so I can't use a powerful Flail, but once it puts me within range and the AI knows what the range is, Explosion, bye-bye Magikarp. So I have to come up with a bit of a different strategy. Alright, so no need to show off the Will battle once again. I'm back at Koga, and this time I use a couple X defense, hoping that will make Forretress just a little bit more consistent. Now unfortunately, remember I said Baton Pass can be a bit of a problem? Well, it is. And now we have to deal with Venomoth, which is far scarier than Ariados. Ariados only has 5 power points of Giga Drain, and yes, opponents do have power points in this generation. And I basically have to heal, meaning I can't use Flail, which sucks, and that means I'll have to hit with multiple tackles. Thankfully, once I hit the first one, I get the second one right away, but you saw I came oh so close, just 1 HP to fainting. Ariados comes back out, and even though Flail would do slightly more damage, I want to save the power points, so I just use Tackle to hit KO. And Forretress, now I basically need to never get within range of it to use Explosion, and just heal before that happens. That's kind of what I figured out. Swift only does 7 HP of damage, so I'm just going to keep spamming Tackle, Tackle, and Tackle, and thankfully, Koga never heals, and we're able to knock it out. Muck was only 2 hits with Tackle, and Crobat, yeah, it used Double Team, but it was only 2 hits with Tackle. So Koga, once we got past Fortress, turned out not to be so bad. And our reward for defeating Koga is Bruno, someone who I've made fun of a lot from Red and Blue, but he's much better in Gold and Silver. Still not super difficult in a lot of runs, but when you're using normal Pokemon, he's definitely not the easiest. And the reasoning for this, if I can speed through the first part of the battle, because, spoiler alert, we're going to have to do this again, it's Machamp. Because unlike his old Machamp, which knew Submission and Fissure, this Machamp knows Cross Chop. And Cross Chop has an increased critical hit ratio, and that is a bit of a big deal. Because now, with the number of turns it might take if I don't manipulate my HP properly, it could get a critical hit easily, bypass my X defense, and well, yeah, that is how the battle can end. And if we're not saving in between battles, getting back to Bruno is actually pretty difficult. Will turns out to be one of the trickiest trainers because of what we talked about earlier. The critical hit chance from Psychic or the special defense drop can just make him a nightmare. And he's definitely making me rethink my no saving thing. Eventually though, with enough attempts, you'll get the luck you need and you can get past him again. But then you gotta deal with the range and Fortress. And in this battle, I just missed knocking it out, and there you go, Explosion knocks me out. And so you have to go and do the will part all over again, and it just takes a lot of time. Of course, you can see I haven't resorted to leveling up yet. I still want to see if I can do this at level 61, the level I just happened to be at, because, well, I mean, why not? It's not like I'm on a time limit or anything, it's just for my own curiosity. And funny enough, by battling these trainers over and over again, I really start to learn about how the AI works. And for example, once we get back to Fortress, turns out the AI isn't perfect when you use X defense, because this time it uses Explosion before it knocks me out, and I'm able to win and make it back to Bruno. And this battle with Bruno, as I set up, I'm going to set up 2 X defense, one in the beginning, one at the end, sandwiched by 6 X attacks. Thankfully, Hitmontop loves to go for Dig. You'll notice my power points have been manipulated. And sure, it might help a little bit to have Struggle for Onix, but that's not what it's for. In fact, I run out of flails once I get to Machamp, which is what I didn't want to happen, and I get a very lucky critical hit. I did use a dire hit, forgot to mention that, so there was an increased chance, but critical hit Cross Chop. Don't want to see that. And yeah, the final Pokemon is Onix. I guess another thing you may have noticed, but I should mention, unlike in Gen 1, it's kind of random the order they send out their final Pokemon in. And that makes it really difficult to come up with super consistent strategies, because some orders are better, and some orders are worse. For example, I would have liked to have seen the Machamp before Hitmonchan and Hitmonlee. But anyway, I do knock out the Onix with Struggle. It took 2, but that's okay. And now, we have to battle my least favorite trainer, maybe in Pokemon history, Karen. This Elite Four, if it had a theme, would be Trolley. And Karen is like the final level, which makes sense. She is the 4th member. Her whole strategy is just to make you miss. And when you use multiple Pokemon, that's really easy to counter. But when you use just one Pokemon, that's really annoying. Thankfully, because we can use items, I can use guard specs, and if I miss one, I can use X accuracies. But unfortunately, in my first Karen attempt, I miscalculated my HP. Struggle does deal recoil damage, even if it isn't that much, and I got knocked out by a feint attack of all things. So I had to battle all 3 of the Elite Four just to get another shot, and I didn't even make it past our first Pokemon, so it's not like I even learnt that much. So it's back to Will, and as it turns out, I'm starting to get pretty consistent once I get past Will, but again, at current level, and I still want to see if I can do the entire Elite Four without having to level up anymore, Will has definitely been by far the most annoying Elite Four member, which is kind of lucky, because when it's the first Elite Four member, I mean, yeah, it's annoying. You'd like to just save so you get more and more attempts at the later people, especially Karen in this case. However, it's not as annoying as with Red and Blue when it's Agatha, and you have to defeat the first 2 Elite Four members, and sometimes Laurely can be annoying too, and yeah, I prefer number 1 being the difficult one. But the strategies, sure, there's some differences in the battle, but overall, we're doing fundamentally the similar stuff with Will and with Koga, so that's why I'm just zooming through them. I mean, Bruno definitely gets the most variability. The key thing is I want to use up all my flails before I get to Karen, or actually before I get to Gengar, to be perfectly honest with you guys. And so what my power points will be at really does depend on the luck I get in Will and especially Koga, since I can miss again and again and again. In this case, I actually had enough flails to make it through almost all of Bruno's Pokemon. The final Onix did require a struggle, but it's only been a few attempts in between, mostly losses to Will, although 1 loss to Koga, and we've made it back to Karen. Can we get through her Umbreon and at least learn about the rest of her team? Now, I start off by using a Guard Spec, and one thing I didn't know is that Guard Spec will actually last for as long as my Magikarp is in the battle. So for the whole battle. That is not the way it works in Generation 3 and beyond, and I just realized it now watching back the footage that I never had to use another one. And for whatever reason, Karen thinks, you know what, if I just keep using Sand Attack, one of them might work. The answer is no, and I'm able to use all of my X attacks. In fact, I even use 1 extra, which just fails. So of course she gets a critical hit feint attack, and from that moment on, she starts attacking and confusing. But I don't need to worry about manipulating my health, since I am only going to use Struggle. So when she attacks and my HP gets low, I can heal. If she uses a confusing move, I can use a full restore. And a couple struggles will knock out her Umbreon. Or it'll come close, and I actually need a 3rd one. Damage ranges, they can be fun. Now, Vileplume I do over half, so this will definitely be a 2 KO, and Stun Spore's okay. I heal up the paralysis, and of course it goes for Battle Dance. That does an incredible amount of damage. Again, no way to boost my special defense, but thankfully I can get rid of the Vileplume. We have 33 HP, which actually wouldn't be all that great for Flail anyway, but until we face that Gengar, we need to keep using Struggle just in case. Speaking of which, here comes the Gengar, and I decide to heal because it can do a ton of damage, or use Curse. It decides to use Lick, and of course it gets that 30% chance for paralysis. Rather than waste a full restore, I decide to go for the full heal. It goes for Curse. Not great, but there's only 2 Pokemon to go. Of course, Gengar has horrible defense, so I'll easily knock it out with the next Struggle. And now I could restore power points if I want to, or I could keep using Struggle. I decided to restore power points to all my moves with a max elixir. Be aware, these are not purchasable items, so I need to be very careful when I use them. Murkrow uses Feint Attack, plus I'm hit by another Curse, so I need to heal. After another round of Curse and Feint Attack, I'm at 64 HP, which is only a base 40 power Flail, which is only slightly more powerful than Tackle and weaker than Struggle. However, I don't have to worry about recoil damage, and it's still more than enough to knock out Murkrow. And if Curse worked the way it did in later generations, I would be at perfect range to knock out Houndoom. Unfortunately, or most cases fortunately, Curse will not activate when you knock out a Pokemon, so I'm not going to risk attacking the Houndoom. I am going to heal, Curse again, Crunch, and I just missed the base 100. Alright, you know what, we're going to try it. Good. We have knocked out Houndoom. That was our 2nd attempt at Karen, and we have defeated her. And now there's only 1 trainer left. Lance. The previous 4th member of the Elite Four has been promoted, somehow. His team is definitely a lot better, and it's going to be decent against Magikarp, but like I always say, there's not much more we can say about it. It's time to just battle him and hope for the best. So, first off, we have our evolved form, Gyarados, with Hyper Beam, and yeah, that's the one I'm most worried about. Rain Dance, Surf, not so much. Although a little bit. And you know what? Flail could be scary too. I guess Gyarados is pretty scary. So I decide to play it safe. I use 2 X defense, and it just keeps going for Flail. Eventually, it realizes, oh yeah, I got Hyper Beam. Unfortunately for it, and fortunately for me, it doesn't do very much damage at all, and Gyarados doesn't have nearly as good a critical hit ratio as it did in Generation 1. So I'm not too nervous about a critical hit, and it does have to recharge, giving me plenty of time to set up all of my X attacks, and heal when I need to. Of course, just having said that, Gyarados does get a critical hit, but thankfully I'm at full HP, and it actually puts me in a very nice position. This is going to be a base 100 power flail. It does enough damage to knock out Gyarados, but will it be enough to knock out the rest of Lance's Pokemon? I'm not sure. Well, might as well find out. Dragonite number 1, it is a one-hit KO. I don't know if that was the one with Thunder. Each of them have a very powerful attacking move, but could have been the Blizzard one. Anyway, that's one down. Here comes his second Dragonite. This one would be the one with Thunder if the first one wasn't, and it should be a one-hit KO again unless it was a range. Doesn't look like it. And that's 3 Pokemon down. Okay. But now we gotta deal with the level 50 Dragonite. Will this flail be enough to knock it out? Yes, it will. Now we just have to deal with Charizard and Aerodactyl. Aerodactyl will resist, so that's a little scary, but this is great. And as if it heard me, out comes Aerodactyl. I am nervous it's not going to be a 1-hit KO because of the rock type, so I'm going to heal. It goes for Hyper Beam, and with the 2x defense, it does next to nothing. I go for Tackle. It's doing about a quarter, I would like to say, but hopefully I can manipulate my HP for a very powerful flail and win this battle. Alright, another Tackle. I'm doing actually a little bit more than half. Wing Attack does next to nothing. Another Tackle. Okay, wow, it almost is a 3 KO. Alright, just gotta tank the... Oh, come on. Are you kidding me? Like, no, this is ridiculous. Unlike Generation 1, where Aerodactyl's speed gives it an insane critical hit ratio, that was a vanilla 6% critical hit. That ended the run. That would have been it. I would have been easily able to knock out Charizard. Are you kidding me? Man, I hate that. You know, especially with Magikarp. On my first try, I was gonna first try Lance. Now I have to go through like a million will battles again and again and again and again until I get one where I don't get critical hits or a special defense drop, and it can take 5 or 6 attempts, and these attempts, well, they take several minutes each, and this isn't accounted for in my in-game time. Since I reset, I very much think I can do it at, well, turns out level 63, 64, but I just need decent will luck. And once I get past will, the other trainers are typically smooth sailing, and as you can tell, these battles aren't quick. It takes a very long time to set up all these X attacks. I do start with 40 X attacks, and I think 20 X defense, I don't even remember, but that way I always know how many I've used, so I don't use an extra one like I did in one battle. Obviously, the battles are not identical to one another. Occasionally, some weird stuff will happen, and I need to adapt. But I do have enough items and enough money for items that pretty much anything that could happen, at least within reason, I have been able to deal with. And thus, once I figured out strategy for Bruno and Koga, I haven't lost to them yet, and now that I've figured out a strategy for Karen, I'm able to beat her once again, and we are finally back at Lance. Can we now get a little bit less bad luck and defeat him? Let's see. Well, this time around, I changed my strategy against Gyarados ever so slightly. I start off with an X attack, that was actually an accident, and I use 3 X defense. A little bit because I was upset about what happened last time, but it had an unintended side effect, which didn't really matter but is interesting. The AI now can realize that Surf will do more damage, even though it's not very effective, than Hyper Beam or Flail, because of all those X defense, and so the Gyarados will just use Surf, and this is actually kind of a good thing, because I just sort of have to worry about the damage it's doing, or 2 times, not like with Hyper Beam where I have to worry about like nothing or a ton of damage. It's a lot more predictable, and that's very good. You may also notice me using a Dire Hit and a Guard Spec. The reason for that? HP manipulation. I want to get to a more powerful Flail. I get to 24 HP. That's a base 100 power Flail. I would have liked a base 200 power, but I can't risk it, so I just knock out the Gyarados. And I think I'm going to do exactly what I did last time. Knock out Dragonite 1, Dragonite 2, Dragonite 3, and oh, Charizard, interesting. That's actually very good. Now I don't have to worry about HP manipulation. I can just get rid of it, and now all I need to do is knock out this Aerodactyl, and we've won. You know what? I'm not even going to heal. Let's see, it has horrible defense. Can I knock it out? Oh my goodness, can I? Oh, are you kidding me? Thankfully it goes for Rock Slide. I still have 12 HP, and Flail's 100%, no random mischances in this generation, so we have defeated the entirety of the Johto League at level 64 with just a Magikarp. That's pretty incredible. However, as many of you know, the game doesn't end here. There are still 8 more gym badges in Kanto, followed by arguably the most difficult trainer in Pokemon history, Red. And it's for this reason I've avoided doing Gold and Silver challenges. Because as I show off some Kanto gameplay, the difficulty curve in Generation 2 is kind of odd. It spikes around the second, or in most cases the third gym, gets much easier, then again at the Elite Four, but it's still not as difficult as pretty much all the other Elite Fours because it comes kind of in the middle. Then it gets a lot easier again with the Kanto gyms. Most of them only have like 3 or so Pokemon, and like some of them aren't even level 40, which in the late game is really low level, until it gets crazy difficult. I mean, Blue is a little challenging, but Red just takes it to a whole nother level. And so I'm not going to spend too much time talking about each of the Kanto gym leaders. In fact, I did all my leveling up beforehand, so they would be pretty easy, and we're just going to kind of speed through what I did in each one. And although you can complete them in pretty much any order you want, I thought it'd be really fun to complete them in the original Red and Blue order, kind of like a callback to the original Magikarp run, except this time you'll get to see every single gym leader. So we're at 28 hours, 27 minutes of in-game time. Let's battle Brock. So Brock has a Pokemon that is surprisingly good to set up against, Graveler. Graveler's most powerful move is Rollout, which can do a ton of damage, but with 2x defense, even a max-powered Rollout only does 88 damage. So as long as I keep that in mind, and Rollout often misses before it gets to max power, I'm able to set up all 6x attacks, and of course those 2x defense, and then I can just proceed to use Tackle to try and get through his team. Kabutops has Giga Drain, but its special attack is really bad. And eventually, once you get damaged enough, you can start using Flail, and then Brock's Pokemon become kind of a joke. I mean, our defense is already high, and that's why I only use 2. It's a point of diminishing returns, but yeah, we just use Flail on his final Pokemon, and that was Brock. Not too big a deal. Misty only has 4 Pokemon, and the one we set up against is Golduck. I did lose twice just trying to figure out if I could be quick and just use a max-powered Flail. We're gonna have to use X attacks, but that's not too big a deal. The Golduck will just keep spamming Psychic, and to be honest, we're really lucky it doesn't have a physical attack because Psy Up copies all those attack boosts that I'm giving myself, but without a physical attack, not much it can do. Unlike Xatu, I don't really need to worry about critical hits or special defense drops because I have so many potions and only 4 much weaker Pokemon to deal with. As you can see, my HP isn't even that low, so Flail's not doing that much damage, but I still knock out every single one of her Pokemon, even the bulky Lapras, and that's 2 Kanto gym leaders down. Lieutenant Surge I also tried to be quick, so it's not going to be a first try victory. I wanted to see if I could use max powered Flail, but because he has a Magneton, that really doesn't work, so I'm going to have to set up against Raichu. Not a great Pokemon to set up against, but we can make it work. Once again, I'm going to set up X attacks, but this time I need to be very careful. Thankfully, Raichu's Thunder can miss 30% of the time, and Thunder Wave, due to a mechanic in both Generation 1 and Generation 2, which is intended, status moves can miss 25%. I did mention it earlier, but it was a while ago. So we finally get hit with Thunder, and you can see it's doing almost 130 damage. That's a lot, and a critical hit would obviously knock me out. And because I'm not getting any luck with Thunder misses, I've only set up 4x attacks, and I only have an 80 base power Flail, but let's try it. Obviously knocks out Raichu. And okay, once we've knocked out Magneton, the rest of the battle is done. None of these Pokemon have the speed or defense to keep up with the mighty Magikarp. Never thought I'd ever say that. But Lieutenant Surge was definitely one of them I was most scared for. And he's done. 3 badges. And in case you were thinking, gee, J-Rose, can we see a bit of a different strategy? Well, guys, I'm using Magikarp. There's only so much I can do, but okay. Let's use a max-powered Flail. And against Erica, 1, 2, 3, 4. I know people hate the count impression, but 4 KOs. Flail, no X attacks needed. It's been a while. Actually, I think this is the first time in this run we've been able to do that. So, speaking of 4, that's 4 gym badges. And Janine, Koga's daughter, she is the easiest gym leader in all of Kanto. She is level 30 Pokemon. 5 of them, but they're so weak. I don't understand, actually. Once again, I start with max-powered flails, but because I haven't been to the Pokemon Center in a while, I don't actually have enough flails, and since I'm in battle, I can't use an ether because if they attack, I'll faint. So on her second wheezing, I need to heal. This isn't really a big deal. I mean, you know, it's just gonna take a lot longer because I have to resort to tackle, and so I do, and the battle is long and it's tedious, but not very concerning, to be perfectly honest. I didn't expect this to be anything other than a first try victory, and look at that, it was. Sabrina might have been as well, but once again I tried for different strategies that weren't quite working. In the end I figured out that I'll go in at full health, use a guard spec because Espeon loves to use Sand Attack, and I could potentially get that special defense drop from Psychic. But yeah, we're gonna go and set up, actually thanks to Espeon, 4x attacks, get to 28 HP, which is a pretty decent flail, and knock out all 3 of Sabrina's Pokemon. So this one took quite a few more attempts than the other ones had, in fact, almost as many as the rest of them combined, because Espeon was annoying and I was being stubborn. But that's what happens when you face easy trainers. You kind of unintentionally make it more difficult, seeing what you can get away with, and once I really tried to win the battle, it wasn't that bad. 6 badges in the books. Now, Blaine is pretty annoying and actually used my own strategy against me. Once I spam too many X attacks, Blaine gets wise and starts spamming Curse. It's going to be slower anyway, so its defense is going up, its attack is going up, so its Rock Slides are going to do a little bit more damage. I can compensate with X defense, but it was definitely kind of tense. I didn't know if I'd knock out Magikarp. Thankfully I got in decent range for Flail and did knock it out. Obviously I should be able to knock out the rest of his Pokemon, or not. I forgot Rapidash had Quick Attack, so I'm going to need to heal there. Lovely. And essentially, the change I made in the strategy is just do what I did, but better. Literally. It's pretty much the exact same battle you just saw, except I end up at 12 HP, and I use, I think, 1 more X defend, and because of that, Rapidash won't use Quick Attack automatically. It will with the good AI if it knows it'll knock me out, or it probably should, and because of my X defense, it actually won't. I could have healed. Again, I made this a little more tricky than I needed to, but now we've defeated all the original Kanto gym leaders and 1 extra, and now we're going to defeat another famous face from Red and Blue. Give it up for Rival number 8, Rival Adel. You know what? Rival Fivel Reborn. Rival Fivel the Revenge. I don't know, it doesn't really matter what we call him because he's also not that difficult. And it's mainly because Pidgeot is really, really easy to set up against. See, I didn't say against. People hate it when I say it like that, even though that's how I've always said it. Anyway, Pidgeot's best attack is Wing Attack, base 60 power, and so we can just spam X defense, X attacks, you know the drill. And once I get to 44 HP, I just use Flail. However, there was a scary moment. Rhydon used Earthquake, and I just barely survive on 3 HP. That may have been a range, but now we're obviously going to knock it out, and that is 16 gym badges with just a Magikarp under level 80. Wow. But all of this was just the calm before the storm of Red. And the one thing about Red, though, that kind of sucks, is what makes the Elite Four so tense in my videos is the fact I don't save. Or in some cases, the fact they're, like, impossible. But with Red, it's 1 trainer. If I figure out the right strategy, and even if I need a little bit of luck, I only need it to happen for 1 battle. That being said, Red was significantly more challenging, especially because Magikarp stops being over-leveled and actually ends up being almost under-leveled. The level jump between Blue and Red is insane. And I can just show you a nice little montage of Red because I was barely able to make it past Pikachu, let alone the rest of his team. And when I did, Espeon would knock me out. And when I did the rare time, Snorlax was no joke. X attacks were not an auto win here. I needed to think of something more clever, especially because we still have a Venusaur to deal with. And I'd love to show you the progression of Red. Unfortunately, all that video got corrupted. All of it. And so, all I can show you is what ended up happening. Once I figured out all the strategies, and then took on Red. So here's what needed to happen. Against Pikachu, I'm going to use 1x attack. And yes, that's intentional that I'm starting at 20 HP because I need a Thunder Miss. So this is already just a 30% chance to work. But if I get that Thunder Miss, I can knock out Pikachu in a single flail. Now, because of whatever algorithm this game uses to determine what Pokemon should be sent out next, I'm going to get Venusaur and not Espeon. And I have a 1 in 2 chance of making it past Venusaur. It has Giga Drain or Solar Beam. If I get Giga Drain, I lose. If I get Solar Beam, because it's a 2-turn attack, with the 1x attack and 20 HP, by the way, why not 3 HP? Pikachu is Quick Attack. If I try and use a max power flail, Pikachu will start the battle with Quick Attack and I'll lose. This was the perfect amount of HP to have, and if you get the Venusaur luck, so now we're at around 15% chance, we can make it to Pokemon number 3. That Pokemon is Espeon, and that's why I need it to be at level 93, because this is when it stops being a range, 150 base power flail, 1x attack, we've knocked out Espeon. For Snorlax, however, we need to heal. This thing is insanely bulky. We're not going to come close to knocking it out. Not only is it bulky, its Body Slam, even against a pretty good defensive Magikarp, does about 60-ish damage. So I'm going to use an X Defend, and then one more X Attack, and I thought of using Flail, but decide to heal, let's be safe. And you know what? I decide to keep healing and set up all 6 of the X attacks. Unfortunately, Body Slam can paralyze. We really don't want that to happen, to be perfectly honest. And now I'm manipulating my HP. I want a pretty decent Flail. And as you can see, 41 is just able to get me a 100 power. That's what we're going to go with. By Snorlax. And now we have another bulky Pokemon in Blastoise. And is Flail going to be enough? No. Just missed. That sucks. That sucks. We could manipulate our HP a little better, maybe, but that really sucks, because if that does that much damage to Blastoise, Charizard would be easy. Unfortunately, because the first part of the battle is so luck-based, it's really difficult to get runs going, and oh yeah, I should mention, Venusaur is a range, by the way. So that 15% number I threw out there was actually inaccurate. It's probably closer to 7.5 or something. And yeah, I could level up, but I don't want to have to be at level 100. So far, our world record is level 99. I want to be able to do it lower than 99. And that means having to lose run after run to Pikachu. It's not too big a deal, you reset, and that's why Red, although difficult, is way less stressful than the Elite Four, because we can just reset and try it again. Alright, we got past the Pikachu again. Now are we going to get the Venusaur range? Oh yeah, based on that, that was max damage. We are definitely getting the Venusaur range. We got a run going. Espeon still isn't a problem, but now we have Snorlax. Very scary Pokemon again. But I had an idea. I don't use the X Defend right away. I set up 1 X attack, 2 X attack, 3 X attacks, then the X Defend, and I don't heal. Now I have a 150 base power Flail, and it knocks out Snorlax. Will it knock out Blastoise? Yes. Only 4 X attacks needed, but with the higher Flail, it made the difference. Charizard, no problem. There we go. I'm like too pumped to even like yell. I'm in shock. I don't even know what to say. I mean, I have been talking for about an hour, but every time I beat the game with Magikarp, it feels awesome. It's something that everyone thinks is a joke. It could never be done, but hey, so far we've done it in 2 games. There are plenty of more to go. Maybe one of these days we'll do it itemless. Yeah, right. Oh, come on. No, you're not going to actually make me. Really?